Hello, everyone. This is Phoenix Tremaine, and today I'm going to be giving you the latest return to Days of Our Lives because today we just got a big clue on what happened to Susan Banks. Based on the Days of Our Lives casting news, it's been revealed that Adam Kane is returning to Days of Our Lives as Edmund Crumb. He was last seen in 1998 and was a character that fell madly in love with Susan Banks. He also married her. The connection to the current storyline is that he lives in England, and that is where Ava and Harris are looking for Susan. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never heard of Edmund, so I thought I'd take a deep dive into their storyline and update folks back on what happened in 1998 and give you a refresher about the storyline they had in 1998 featuring Kristen, Susan, Edmund, if you were back then, watching the show back then. So first, let's go on ahead and hit that like button. It's free to do. If you haven't subscribed, go on ahead and hit that subscribe button. That's also free to do. And it helps the channel out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. If you want to go the extra mile, just go on ahead and become a member where you get exclusive videos. You get articles. You would have seen this video in advance. And, we'd love to have you in a membership. It's a great place to be. And we do our lives every Friday. So this is the storyline. Susan Banks arrived in England and met Violet Crumb, the owner of a local pub. Susan also met Violet's son, Edmund P. Crumb. And the P stands for Phineas, Edmund Phineas Crumb. Susan and Edmund instantly fell in love. Meanwhile, Jonesy Jones, good Lord, these soap names, Vivian Alamain and Ivan Maris came to England so Jonesy and Vivian can marry in Jonesy's homeland. Unfortunately, Jonesy's homeland was where Susan was hiding out. Susan and Vivian came face to face and screamed. Eventually, Vivian convinced Susan that she was not here to steal Elvis, but to marry Jonesy. Jonesy and Vivian were legally married in February of 98. Now, I'm going to stop right there because we know Vivian Alamain is also back on the show, and there's something going on like with marriage as far as was Victor and Vivian legally married? Could it be that it's the other way around and Vivian is still married to Jonesy, and so that way Maggie can end up getting back, Victor's fortune and everything? That's just speculation, but I'm just trying to put the pieces together because we got Vivian back on the show. We got Susan coming back. We just discovered Edmund is going to be coming back, and we're back into the storyline in London. Edmund and Susan had a whirlwind courtship, and Edmund decided to go into London to buy Susan an engagement ring. While he was away, Susan received a mysterious phone call from a woman who said that she had to meet with her. When Edmund returned, he learned that Susan was stuck in Salem because Kristen had been bumped off, and Susan was a suspect. In Salem, Abe and Roman took Susan, that's in quotation marks, and because we know it's going to turn out to be Kristen, into the station for questioning, and Susan claimed to never have been at the house. Suddenly, Edmund burst into Abe's office. Edmund introduced himself as Susan's fiance. Edmund asked if Susan was being locked away, and Abe said no. Later, Edmund proposed to what was supposedly Susan, and Kristen had no choice but to accept. Kristen feared that Susan was the person who got bumped off in a pool, and that she would be charged with getting rid of her if anyone learned she wasn't really Susan. And I got to be very careful of how I say certain words on YouTube. I just had a video demonetized because of a word I used. So we're gonna use words like bumped off and locked up, sent away, because this algorithm be acting crazy. But when Kristen learned that Susan was no longer a suspect and was free to leave, Kristen planned on skipping town when Edmund surprised her by bringing Violet and Elvis to Salem. Kristen attempted to, uh, let's say, medicate Violet and sneak off with baby Elvis, which is EJ Demare. Unfortunately, John found her and brought her to the Penthouse Grill, where Edmund had arranged for a surprise wedding. In order not to blow her cover, Kristen married Edmund. After the wedding, Kristen wanted to leave Salem immediately, but Elvis came down with an ear infection and couldn't fly. Kristen was pretending to be Susan, rushed to the airport for her honeymoon, and hoped to beat Edmund to the plane and leave without him. Kristen met up with Stefano at the plane. They hugged as Kristen was about to leave. Suddenly, Edmund showed up and accused Stefano of attempting to deceive Susan. Stefano left, and Susan and Edmund boarded the plane. On the way to Bermuda, Edmund confessed that he was the one who bumped off the person who was ended at the pool. Uh, Edmund says when he went to London, he heard about his mom from his mom, but Susan had left for Salem. Edmund followed her and confronted Kristen the night she was bumped off. Edmund admitted to pushing her into the pool and wouldn't help her until she told him where Susan was. Unfortunately, she drowned. I don't know if I'm supposed to use that word. Kristen was horrified and was further horrified because if Edmund learned he was she was Kristen, he might get rid of her too. Kristen told Edmund that she couldn't be married to him, and once the plane landed, she wasn't leaving and he wasn't to follow. A broken-hearted Edmund agreed. Meanwhile, the real Susan was busy plotting how she could escape from the island palace she was in. Susan escaped, but was caught and was ordered to be bumped off. When Susan was forced to be bumped off, she noticed that the person supposed to do it began choking on a chicken bone. Susan saved him by performing the Heimlich maneuver, and then he took a liking to her and decided that she would be with him 24 hours a day. Susan managed to conk the Supreme Leader over the head and escape with a tiny chest full of diamonds. Susan called Edmund to warn him about Kristen and spoke to Violet and learned about the honeymoon being in Bermuda. Susan deduced that Kristen was pretending to be her and stole her baby and Edmund. Susan hired a pilot to fly to Bermuda, where she was surprised both Kristen and Edmund. Susan exposed Kristen, and both Kristen and Edmund were confused as to who actually got bumped off in the pool. Right then, Susan realized that Penelope had been bumped off. Susan to Edmund and Susan about her fourth sister. Well, I think that was supposed to be Susan told Edmund about her fourth sister, Penelope Kent, who came to Salem to help her. Edmund admitted to getting rid of her, but Susan says she knows it was an accident and that Penelope was, not going to make it anyway. To get revenge on Kristen, Susan arranged for her to be sent back to the island where she had sent her. Edmund and Susan were married for real on April 21st, 1998. Before leaving Salem, Kristen had pulled off one last scheme where she was trying to get rid of Marlena, but it didn't work. And so Susan got the last laugh, letting Kristen know her plan to get between between Marlena and John didn't work. And so Kristen was left on this island. But, it didn't last. Kristen eventually escaped or whatever. But that was the story, of Edmund and Susan and just all of the Salem craziness from 1998. I was ready for them to go to Eterna, look for the Aztec princess. That's more life to live in General Hospital. But those were the type of stories we were getting back then, which were great, fun, memorable, and all of that. I do wish that I was watching Days of Our Lives back in the day. but I wasn't, but I am now. And hopefully you enjoyed this recap and all of the craziness. And let's see what happens now that Susan probably being held against her will by Edmund in London. And how does she get from, this is the crazy part. How does Susan get from Salem car accident to uh, England? so, so we're about to find out. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And tell me what you think about the return of Edmund and this crazy storyline they had back in 1998. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.